Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Hollins Through the Decades. We're so delighted that you're here this evening, and especially excited and grateful to all of our panelists who have joined us. You probably noticed a theme. We are really excited to have our zeros and fives on the line with us tonight and participating in this panel through the decade. So thanks so much for being here, and thank you to our awesome attendees for joining us as well. We want this to be as interactive and fun as possible, so those joining us, please type your name and class year in the chat feature. Just use the drop-down box to chat to all panelists and attendees so that you can connect with others from your class that may be watching. And as we see messages and questions for our panelists, we will feed them to them. I'll also just note, you can set this up what we're calling Brady Bunch style. So you can see all of us on your screen by choosing the gallery view. It may be in the upper right or left-hand box of your screen, but it's really fun to see all of the panelists here together, and just so excited to have a little taste of Hollins on this evening. I'll also just share a quick update. Everyone is so curious. Our students are back on campus. Classes began yesterday, and we are really thrilled to have them back. The energy and excitement is building. They are doing a great job of getting to their classes and being socially distant, and campus just feels more alive and so welcoming with them there. So really fun and excited for a great year ahead. So what we're going to do now is take a minute to meet the fabulous alumni who've joined us this evening. And as we go around, we will have them share their name and class year, and then their favorite Hollins tradition. So for those of you who haven't met, I'm Lauren Walker, Director of Alumni Relations, class of 2004. And my favorite Hollins tradition is probably opening convocation, that beginning of kick off the new year, get out your fresh notebooks and lead into that. So that has always been one of my favorites. Jasmine, I'm going to turn it over to you, my fabulous colleague.
Hi, everyone. I'm the events coordinator for Alumni Relations, and I graduated in 2019. So I'm like reminiscing about opening convocation and me taking first step. But my favorite Hollins tradition was definitely ring night, because a lot of my friends were juniors when I was a senior. And so I had 3 littles, and I enjoyed giving them their baskets. I enjoyed crafting for them. I mean, you're not like a Hollins student or alumna if you don't have a minor in crafting. So like that was my favorite tradition, and hands down. Sandra from class of 1970, we'll start with you.
I'm excited to be here tonight. I graduated in 1970, as you said, but so it's 50 years, a long time ago. A lot of the traditions you think of traditions didn't exist 50 years ago. Ring night did not exist. First step did not exist. We didn't have the rock. I mean, there are a lot of things. And there goes my husband walking through. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I went to school in the South. I really love the fact that there were cows on campus. We had our own milk. We did. We collected our own milk in the back by the stables. And I moved to Cleveland in 1979, followed my husband there temporarily. And I'm currently residing in a suburb of Cleveland. So I'm happy to be here. I also would like to mention I'm on the board of Hollins, and I am so honored and so privileged to be on the board. It is one of the greatest things I have ever been asked to do in my life.
You have a huge fan club, Sandra, going wild on the chat. We love you, Sandra. Class. So a little compliment though. Rena, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. I graduated in 75. Was from Rome, Georgia. I guess I still am from Rome, Georgia. My mother went to Hollins. She is now 94. And so I enjoyed that tradition of being 2 women in the same family. My next door neighbor also went to Hollins. But I think my favorite tradition at Hollins, which was, you know, every day, was sitting on the front porch of Maine and those rockers. And once our children live in DC, so traveling there, we usually stay at the guest house at Hollins, spend the night overnight. And on one walk around campus, we saw some in the maintenance shed over near where the riding stables at least were. And they were getting rid of a few of them. And so I got one from my next door neighbor, another friend from Rome, and myself. I bought them from Hollins, and my husband refurbished them. So I sit in a Hollins rocker most days and when it's not freezing.
Oh, that's awesome. Lynn.
Okay, Lynn Bernhard graduated in 1985, and now that's like a really long time ago, and that's hard to accept sometimes. My favorite tradition was ring night. Mine wasn't that interesting, but when we did for the juniors, when we were seniors, that got a little crazy. It was the 80s after all. And I live in Pennsylvania. I live just over the Maryland line, about 40 miles north of Baltimore.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. Tamina. You're on mute.
Okay, so my name is Tamina McMillan, class of 1995. My favorite Hollins tradition is Tinker Day. It's that whole anticipation, like Christmas, not knowing when it's going to happen, the sleuthing to trying to figure out when it was going to happen. And I have 4 kids, and I can say that all 4 of them look forward to Tinker Day. We always celebrate it every year, and nothing like serving Krispy Kreme for breakfast. That's amazing. And I currently have a daughter who's at Hollins. She's her sophomore year. So it's great to have that tradition with her.
Oh, that's so cool. And she is such a powerhouse on the campus. I believe her class president, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, she is.
Oh, that's so cool. All right, Antoinette.
Hi, everyone. Antoinette Hillian, class of 2000. I'm originally from Northern Virginia, and I currently live in Shaker Heights, just outside of Cleveland, down the street from Sandra. Let's see. So favorite tradition, also, I thought it was going to be unique, but it was also ring night. Just the build up, the 3 days, the different activities that I don't think are all allowed now anymore. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to save my son's life. He just learned how to climb. And then of course the final ring night event in the, I guess, in the dining hall, everyone coming together. I mean, that was just kind of the peak of like my Hollins experience in terms of traditions.
That's awesome. Mimi.
I'm Mimi, and I graduated in 2005. And I'm going to cheat and say 2 things that I like. I decorated the rock constantly my senior year, so I'm going to say that. But I'm also going to say ring night because I actually transferred into Hollins from George Mason. Ring night was a really big deal for me because I was in my chemistry class. I made, actually it was genetics, but genetics, I made a ton of friends, and I was ring sisters with those girls. And I got to be very close with those friends. So I had a really big weekend with them, and that's how I really bonded with them. So I think that that's probably my favorite tradition because of that.
Awesome. Hannah.
Hi, my name is Hannah Earp. I'm currently located in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm class of 2010, which I was just looking at the chat. I feel like I might be the only person on here from the class of 2010. So if you're on, please chat so I know that we're represented. My favorite tradition probably would be first step. but Ring Knight's a close second. It's really hard to pick, as you all know. They're all wonderful.
And last but certainly not least, Brenna.
Hey y'all, my name is Brenna Reve, class of 2015. I currently live in Washington, D.C., and my favorite tradition was definitely First Step. I was one of those students who would not walk on front quad without permission, so I was so excited on that first day of senior year, and just wearing your decorated robes and hanging out with all your friends and popping the bottles was just a lot of fun.
That's great, Brenna. I can also say that First Step was like a close first for me because I got my robe passed down to me. So yeah, it was just a really good time. So our second question for tonight is, what was your favorite class or professor as a student? And since we ended on Brenna, we're going to start with you and then work our way up.
So I'm going to cheat a little bit and say that it was a tie for me. So I think it was a tie between my senior seminar with Renee Goddard. We got to have a private meeting with Jane Goodall before she spoke to all the students. So that was incredible. And then Marxist theory with Professor Boland, because that was just an incredible class with a group of really, really cool people.
I really liked biological psychology with Bonnie Bowers. She's probably my favorite professor. I took like 4 classes from her, so I really liked taking class with her. She's my favorite.
Anna, what about you? What was your favorite class or professor as a student?
I have to say I was a communication studies major, so I probably spent the most time with Professor Richter. But I loved my time in my minor of psychology with Professor Ledger.
Awesome.
He was always late in Dana, and I'd always be studying, and he'd be playing cards, and he was really great. And I actually was terrible at math, and Professor Phyllis with an M. What's her last name? Oh gosh. I'll think of it and come back. But I actually despised her. And then in the end, we became extremely close. What was her last name? I can't believe I'm forgetting this. I'll think of it and chime back in. But, a subject that I always hated and always feared, she ended up being one of my favorites.
Antoinette, what about you?
So I'm going to share a little bit. So I think my favorite, so I was a bio major, so I spent a lot of time in Dana. That's where I spent the bulk of my time. I actually think it was Dr. Goddard. So she, I think, was the newish professor when I started. And she is possibly the most vibrant professor I've ever had, just made everything come alive. I think I took 1 class with her, which says a lot, my freshman year. But even so, just seeing her on the halls, but then even into grad school. So it's interesting. So I had to give talks as a grad student for my research, and I tried to channel her and her vibrancy and her energy and just how to make things exciting. So you just got 1 class, but I think she stuck with me the most.
Awesome. What about you, Tamina?
So I too was a biology major. So all of my Hollins years were in Dana. And I'm jealous because Dr. Goddard actually sat on the panel and she helped basically critique my dissertation. And I was jealous that I never had a class with her. But my favorite class and professor at Hollins was Bruce Young. He was a biology professor, and the class that he taught that was amazing was comparative anatomy. So we had the opportunity to discuss and learn about the different anatomies of various animals, and then also dissect, which was really, really cool. And he was just super passionate about his subject matter and very engaged and super smart and arrogant. And he was just awesome. He really made science come alive for me. So that was my favorite class and professor.
Wow, we have so many science people on the panel tonight. I'm loving it. I wish I was a science person, political science. But Lynn, what about you?
Well, back in 85, there was a computational sciences major, which was statistics, math, and computer. And I loved my computer classes, and I loved Bob Hansen. He was my favorite person, and he put up with all my antics and smart comments and whatnot. And really enjoyed that. Another professor, though, that I do have to give credit for is David Weinman. He solved my mystery about why do I want to major in something that's my worst subject, math. I'm an idiot in math. And he goes, well, maybe that's because it's the only thing you can't figure out. And I'm like, oh, that's refreshing.
And next is Rena. How about you?
Well, I was divisional science, math and science major, but I don't know. Now I just love all the culture and art and ethics and history. I mean, along with the other, but I guess I'm at a point where I'm not doing a lot of chemistry or a lot of math, except try to balance my checking account. But I loved Mr. Becker, and I had Mr. Evetts for American history. And I've let Lauren know this. I read an article by a young woman whose middle name was Evetts in the New York Times a few weeks ago, who happened to be the Evetts daughter. So I can send that to you if you're interested. And then also watched the polio pandemic, and our professor, Lawrence Becker, was part of the interview. So that was really interesting. Anyway, just lots of other wonderful professors and friends, the professors that really became a friend.
Wow, there's Hollins connections everywhere. I feel like I tell people that all the time. But last but surely not least, Sandra, how about you? Oh, I think you're on mute, Sandra.
We had a humanities requirement our freshman year. And I had, the man I thought at the time was probably, I thought he was like 90, but I'm sure he wasn't. But his name was George Ford, and he opened my eyes to what liberal arts truly meant. Now I'm going to add something though, Rena. Evetts was, we were the first class our senior year to live in the apartments across the street. And the Evetts were a young couple, and they lived over there. And I remembered their daughter, who was really young. I mean, they were this young, hip couple who were going to keep us in line. These women, you had to be a senior to live in the apartments across the street. This was, we were given freedom. And so that, I'd love to see the articles. They were the greatest people.
They were our class sponsors.
Yeah, well, yeah, we had, well, we'll get to that later, who our class sponsor was. He's still around.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, I have to say, not only are these Hollins connections, but Rena, Meredith Pierce Hunter is on watching, and
I saw Meredith's little message, and I was looking to see if I had her email on my phone. Hey, Meredith.
We'll make sure to connect the two of you. It's so funny. I know I often reflect back to my first visit at Hollins and who I stayed with. Kate and Katie, they were roommates, and that was always so tricky, you know, how they were going to keep each other straight. But I think we all remember those first impressions, or maybe the first person that introduced us to Hollins, and what exciting journey that began for us. So it really is neat to see. I want to also take a minute. Several in our chat feature are asking about ring night, or first step. I apologize, first step, and when that got started. And we don't have a definitive date, but we think it was sometime in the mid-90s that first step began. And that was the seniors taking their ceremonial first step onto front quad. So kind of celebrating that with champagne, or now sparkling cider. The students now decorate their robes with kind of their passions and interests. And so they wear their decorated robes and traditionally line up and take that first big step. So anyway, that's a great new tradition, and we will have First Step this year on Friday. We will be doing it in waves so that we can socially distance, but we want to make sure that this year's class of 2021 does not miss out on that awesome tradition. So I know traveling abroad was a big part of many students' experience, and I'd love to hear if anyone on the call had the opportunity to travel abroad during their time at Hollins and where they went.
I would like to start because I did not. We had one option, which was Hollins Abroad, which was a full year. And I was a politics major. It was not a science back then. And so I did a Washington semester. I will tell you, though, that since then, I have had 2 opportunities to travel with Hollins students to Jamaica. And it has been, I would have died to have been able to do that back then, but we didn't have those choices.
Oh, lots of Hollins Abroad Parisers chiming in. Anyone else? Who else got to travel abroad? Antoinette.
I did. So I think it was a little, so we had, Paris and London. I think there were 2 Ireland programs. I think were the set ones in Jamaica. So I went to Limerick my sophomore year. Usually it was a little bit trickier for the science majors to go abroad at that point. So I went a little bit early. So I went my sophomore year, did the semester, was able to take classes that transferred back to my science major. But, that was, an amazing experience. My first time traveling abroad. So I obviously Ireland to Dublin. I went to mainland Europe, traveled around by myself for spring break, learned how to be very self-reliant. So that was, one of the best experiences there.
I had a great experience in Rome for a month in January. My college roommate, and a couple of others, there were just 5 of us. We went with Miss Laidlaw and Miss Fort. Sandra, I bet you remember them. Lynn, maybe. Anyway, they basically picked us up at the airport, took us to our hotel downtown, right in the middle of the city, mostly these 3 Southern girls at that time, and gave us a list of things to go see and do. And twice a week, they would come give us a lecture for an hour and a half, and we were just on our own after that. But they took us to Pompeii and Herculaneum, which was a really remarkable experience. And I saw that Miss Laidlaw is still living, and I wrote her a note during the pandemic. I didn't hear back from her.
I studied abroad in London, spring semester of my junior year. I had taken a gap year, so I was behind in getting to study abroad. So Hollins actually allowed me to bring my best friend from high school to come with me. She transferred through Hollins abroad and came with me via UGA. And we had an incredible life-changing experience as high school best friends, seeing the world. Our host family were the Skinners, and I still keep in touch with them. I saw them last year. They sent my son a present when he was born, the sweetest family. And they said that they had never had students that traveled every weekend quite like we did. We would book a plane, whatever was the cheapest at the time, and put, 4 girls and 2 twins. And we went to multiple places in Italy. We went to Greece. We went to France multiple times. We went to Ireland and the Netherlands. And that's off the top of my head what I can remember. We lived every minute to the fullest over there. It was a huge selling point for me coming to Hollins, and a huge takeaway for my memories.
Also went to London my sophomore year. And fun fact, my college roommate who I went to London with is actually staying with me right now. We're quarantining together, so she's in the next room. But yeah, London was super fun. I also, the reason I came to Hollins actually was my other abroad experience. I was lucky enough to meet Renee Goddard on my tour of Hollins, and she told me about this East Africa program that was available to environmental studies majors. And that's kind of what made me want to come to Hollins. I wanted to go on safari and study wildlife. And she told me all about this. And I was like, I'm not going to get this opportunity anywhere else. And it's kind of what sealed the deal. And then I also did a J term also with Renee in the Caribbean doing marine biology.
That's awesome. Sandra, did you go with 1842 to Paris and London 4 years ago?
Yes, that was.
I thought you did.
Yes.
Yeah, I did as well. I got to go back.
Yeah, we had a grand time in Paris. We took the shuttle over to London that night. We went to the theater.
We did. And that night, the bombings happened in Paris.
Yeah.
My now husband, father of my child, conveniently, we were dating at the time. And I just remember coming out and he had called me, all these times. And he said, have you left Paris yet? Because I hadn't even told him, I was going to London and Paris, we were kind of newly dating. And the bombing happened night after the Hollins 1842 left. And I actually stayed with my host family while I was with Hollins 1842 and Miss Maddie's Circle. So they hosted again in London.
It certainly put a little damper on our wonderful, wonderful trip. But fortunately, nobody was hurt. So, we got through that.
So you did study abroad, Sandra?
Well, I did. I traveled the world. That's not quite the same. I did study abroad. I did we had a Washington semester. So I was in DC for a semester. And I will tell you, I met the astronauts who had gone to the moon. They were presenting in front of Congress, and my college roommate, Susan Downing's father was on the House Space Committee, and he got us into the hearing, and we met the astronauts and actually got to touch the moon rocks.
Okay, young alum, this is why you have to be in Miss Maddie's Circle and to crazy stories about these 1842 fabulous women.
Yes.
Lynn, did you travel abroad?
Yes, I did. Elizabeth Comstetter and I, we had a lot of fun, and we stayed with Mrs. Tucker. What a character. And I learned one thing very important. Now, we traveled all over the place every weekend pretty much, but we really learned that do not try to go on vacation and travel during Easter. Okay, because 4 of us went to Spain because we wanted to be on a beach in the Mediterranean. And we had to take the train. We didn't want to waste any days. And so Elizabeth wasn't feeling well, so she and another of our classmates, they went ahead and went back the day early. The 2 of us that were left, oh my goodness, we could not get out of Spain. We had to call and say, we're stranded. And the gentleman who had the little place that we were staying, he drove us all over the town, and finally we got booked on British Airways to come back. So it was exciting. But yeah, went to London and loved it, didn't want to come back.
That's awesome. Anyone else want to share their travel adventures? I love hearing all about this, especially.
Well, before we move on to the next question, I also went abroad. I went to London. I went to Jamaica first, my sophomore year. And it was the first time I'd ever been out of the country, ever been on a plane, ever gone to the beach. It was all my first, so it was great. And then the next year in the spring, I went to London and loved it. And like Hannah, I still keep in contact with my host family. And my host sister came to see me last November. And Lauren got to meet her because she wanted to see the Hollins campus. So I still keep in contact with them. I talk to her like once a week. So we still keep in contact. The next question is, share your impressions, your first and last day impressions as a student. So your first impression as like a freshman coming onto campus and your last day on campus. And Tamina, you look really excited, so you can go first.
Yeah. So I tell this story to everyone. So I went to Hollins during the 90s when diversity was a huge topic. And there was a huge movement on many universities all across the nation to increase diversity. And I think Hollins has done a much better job now because my daughter's obviously there, where there was a big push to recruit students of color and not necessarily a lot of support to retain them. And I remember reading the brochures about Hollins and seeing the numbers and then like reading the numbers and then actually seeing what those numbers look like in person, like two totally different things. Like I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and my uncle drove us and he went the wrong way. We went the wrong way and we were like 2 hours late for orientation. So when I got on campus, I remember walking over onto like the field hockey field that was kind of elevated and looking out onto the sea, and all I saw were like these white faces. And I remember turning around and looking at my Aunt Mary and saying, "Oh, I think I made a mistake." And then she was like, "No, baby, you're here. Just hang in there and just try it out and see how it is." So my first impression was not so great. But in hindsight, especially by the time I graduated, like commencement, all the friends that I made, all the memories I made, all the challenges that I faced, but the opportunities that were presented to me at Hollins, like I say this a lot and I really, really mean this, but Hollins like changed my life. It gave me a wider view of the world and all the possibilities. And I'm so glad that my aunt did not let me turn around and like leave campus, because the first day I thought I made a mistake, and it was absolutely one of the best things that ever happened to me. So much so that after I graduated, I actually stayed and recruited students for 2 years. And I couldn't sell it if I didn't believe in it. And it was amazing.
Jasmine, you're
on mute.
Oh, sorry. Antoinette, you can go next.
I just want to piggyback off of what Tamina said. So coming in also mid-90s, there were very few Black students at the time, and Tamina was in admissions, and she was one of the, alums we saw. We're like, hey, look, here's another Black alum. I don't think you were involved with recruiting me, but maybe you were. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But just seeing you around, and you had been at Hollins was always a huge, just and a motivating factor. So no, all these years later, I don't know how much I talked to you on campus, but I knew you were around, and that was just a huge influence. So my first days on Hollins, so I started fall '96. I got there early because I was going to be in the volleyball team and part of the HOT program, which I believe is still around. I think we had some sort of like outdoorsy camping thing that first week. The first week in the dorms, mostly they were empty. And I spent those first weeks being extrovert. I had my door open, saying hi to everyone who walked by, just trying to meet all new people. So anyone who knows me, that's very not character for me. So new time in my life, kind of, branch out a little bit. So that was interesting, just, trying to figure it all out there. And as for my last days at Hollins, so spring of 2000, so my roommate and I were the co-editors for Spinster. And we ended up having to stay after graduation, like a week. We had to get special permission from campus to stay so we could finish up the yearbook, because there's been some sort of delay. So we were over in the apartments by ourselves. Campus was empty for like a week. We were just hanging out, working on the Spinster. And after everyone had left, I think it gave us like an appreciation for being there. So we knew everyone was gone, and here we are. We had these last few days pretty much all to ourselves on campus to just savor and enjoy and appreciate.
That's great. Does anybody else want to go next?
I will. 1966. Actually, our class was the first class to have an African American, Cecilia Long, who is a good friend of mine and was really active on working on our 50th reunion, which did not happen. But she lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she is one of the classiest women I have ever known. But my first day, and I was a Yankee, and I had a roommate. I had 2 roommates. This is back 1966, height of the baby boom. Anyone who lived in East, and that's Tinker was where seniors lived at the time. East. I was in Near East on the 3rd floor, and I had 2 roommates because we had, in fact, the room across from us had 3, and they had a bunk bed, a single, and their chests of drawers and their desks were in the hall. That's how crowded we were. So we get there, and to this day, I'm still embarrassed. My mother and my college roommate's mother from Virginia, whose husband was a congressman who had gone to Hollins, had a knockdown, drag out fight over which bed I was going to get versus my roommate, Susan. These 2 women who were dressed to the nines are fighting over whether or not you got the bed in the center or the one to the side. So I started off with Hollins with a roommate, and we weren't quite sure what, we went actually and hid and became very best friends because we couldn't tolerate the behavior of our mothers. The other end of the spectrum, though, was not as much fun. 1970, Kent State. And as a student body, along with the faculty, we voted not to close the school, but to allow people to leave. I didn't take a final. We got to take everything pass, fail in my discipline, which was politics. Other classmates did take finals, and we all left campus, except for the ones working on the Spinster. They had to stay around to finish. And then we came back 2 weeks later for graduation and never had any closure. And we were so hyped about coming back for our 50th to bring that closure. And we're coming back next year. So it's life what it is. But it was, we just left. We left. It was a hard time. But think about my mother and my college roommate's mother fighting over the bed. It was not pretty.
That's hilarious. I was actually afraid that would happen too. So I got to move in early because I did a pre-orientation program, but I could have seen my mom doing the exact same thing. What about Brenna? Do you want to go next?
Sure. I was so nervous on the first day. I'm the oldest child, so I was like the first one out of the house, the first one to go off to college, and I was just like a nervous wreck the whole day. And we got together with our freshman seminar groups, and I was just like, I was not talking. I was just like a ball of nerves. And this girl comes up to me and she's like, "Hi, I'm Alex. How are you? I like your nail polish." And that's how I met the person who had become my roommate, who is currently navigating COVID with me. So that's always a really nice memory of like, she made me a lot less nervous on the first day, and we've been friends ever since. Leaving campus, I was crying in the backseat of my parents' car. I did not want to leave. I mean, obviously I was excited to start my job and in my life in DC, but Hollins will always be home to me. Every time I step back on campus, it's just like this feeling of happiness, and there's just so many memories there. So leaving campus was probably one of the hardest things I've done.
One of the earliest memories I have was 71 and the beginning of the women's movement. So Gloria Steinem and Bella Abzug were on campus. There was just a lot going on, a lot of conversation. I don't remember any real hostility, but I called my parents, from one of those phones in the hall and was telling them all about it. My mother said, "Do you want to come home?" And I said, "Heck no, I love this." But I'll never forget that. And it was I began to learn what I needed to know. Let's put it that way.
Mimi, what about you? What was your first and last impressions of Hollins?
My mom actually went to Hollins. And I'm from Roanoke. So I actually spent a decent amount there when I was younger. And I always wanted to go to Hollins. That was kind of my destination. But my mom always said, "You're going away for school. You are not welcome in town." So that was kind of my push. You're to go out away from us. And so I left, and I actually really liked the program I was in, but it just didn't feel like the community I wanted. And so I knew that Hollins was a good place to find that. And so I was really happy to transfer in. I knew I could find that at Hollins. And so when I got there, I was pretty happy. But it was actually kind of funny because I lived at home my first semester, which is kind of ironic. But then I did get on campus because I did need to get out of the house. At that point, I was 20 years old, and I needed to be on campus. But yeah, I mean, like everybody else, I was really sad when I had to leave. I loved college. It was, it's the best time of your life. You want to stay in college forever. So it was fantastic. I made great friends, and I have an ongoing group text with them. And one of my really good friends just had a baby, and so we were all excited about that. And that was our newest thing that we were just talking about yesterday. And I talk to them constantly, so I miss that contact with them this year for a reunion. That was sad, but that's, I guess, a good thing that I got to come home. In some ways, my mom didn't reject me from coming home when I finally did get to move, but but yeah.
That's great. Lynn, do you want to go next, and then we'll go to Hannah?
Sure. I have to say I transferred into Hollins. Hollins was my third college. Things didn't quite go as planned after I graduated high school. I had a career change. And so, of course, here I am as a sophomore moving into Tinker, and I've never been away from home. And I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. So I want to meet people. Well, my mother, and I thought I had a great mother story, but no, mine does not compare to yours, Sandra. But my mother would, as fast as she would, I was unpacked, she would try to put things in the closet. And I'm like, can you just go away? And I kept trying to get her to go away. And then I find out later from, Elizabeth, that they were really, you didn't really want to talk to me because they're like, who's this girl? She's so rude to her mother. And she tells me this, a month later. And then she says, and then we met your mother. You're nice. So, there's a lot more with my mother. But anyway, but the thing that I was really amazed about, whenever I walked out of Tinker and I saw Tinker Mountain and all the beauty of the campus, I kept thinking I was in a movie. I wasn't at college. I wasn't, hard. It was so beautiful. And it was full of people that didn't discriminate, everybody wanted to work hard and have a good time and learn things and open our minds. And so I just really don't feel like I worked really, really hard. It wasn't a struggle. I didn't feel like I went to college. Oh, and to leave. Yes, I was upset to leave. I didn't want to really talk to anybody, and really, I didn't like that. I didn't like leaving.
Yeah, everybody always says stuff about going to a girls' school, and it was like going to camp. And I said, absolutely, it was like going to camp in a good way. But it was, yeah, it's like academic camp. Yeah.
My first day of Hollins was similar to Antoinette's and Tamina, not that I'm African American, but that I just didn't feel like this was the right fit for me. I looked around and didn't see anyone that I could really identify with. Luckily, I had a lovely roommate, but in the line outside of Moody to get my card, I came back to the room and I told my parents, like, don't unpack anything because I'm not staying here. And that quickly changed. Everyone that I had ever spoken to always said, give college a year, not a semester, because you can't know what, you go home that first December break and you've got to give it that next, spring to kind of know where you are, know who's around you, and know how you fit in. And that was great advice. And I stayed, and it was the best decision I ever made. I have to say, President Gray started when I started. So my father had actually heard about Hollins through some people from High Point, North Carolina, and drove me there. And I didn't even look it up because I had already verbally committed to a ballet scholarship at University of South Carolina. But I told him I'd ride with him. And halfway through, he told me it was all girls, and I cried the other half of the way. And got on campus and was such a brat to the tour guide. I ended up doing 4 years of tour guides to make up for my bad karma. And I loved it, and secretly inside. And one night I got home from ballet class, and President Gray was on the phone, and she said, I've got your application in front of me. I'm starting new. You're the epitome of the Hollins woman, in my opinion. You should come. And I hung up the phone, and I looked at my parents. I was like, I'm going to go to Hollins. I'm not going anywhere else. And she was the reason I went, and zero regret. The day left was on a Saturday, and I moved to New York in summer temporary housing the next Saturday because I had taken a summer internship at UBS because of my January internship with Holly Hendricks at UBS. I turned down a master's program and 2 full-time jobs in Virginia to take a summer internship in New York. I thought my parents were going to die. But I stayed there for 5 years, stayed employed. It was great. I had a fabulous experience all the way through. Huge cheerleader for Hollins, and made the best of friends and the best of memories.
It's so cool. And I just want to echo as well how sad and disappointed we were that we weren't able to have everyone back on campus, because there is no place like Hollins, and our Hollins connections are just always in our hearts and always with us. And I know it's so special to everyone on the call and to our attendees. And it's also so neat, as we're seeing tonight, and as we always see at reunion, how, our class years suddenly fade away. And you step back on front quad, and we're all part of this really awesome and unique community, and how we take it with us wherever we go. So with that in mind, I would love it if anyone would like to share something they're really especially proud of that's happened since graduation that you'd like to share with the group.
Can I throw a question out there for you all to think about? Not really in response to yours, but I would love to hear from you all how you are processing this time in our country and society, and how your Hollins experience affects that. That may be too big of a question. It may be off the table, but I'm just sitting here thinking about these remarkable people. And I think so often about how my time at Hollins put some pretty serious stamps on me.
So I want to answer your question. One of the things that I'm very proud of about Hollins, I remember, and I think Antoinette, you probably can relate, but with us being liberal arts graduates and science majors, I was pre-med. I remember interviewing at medical schools, and I had to defend the reason why I had a BA instead of a BS. And I was very confident in saying that actually I think it's a great asset to your program because you have someone who knows how to think outside of the scientific box. Like, because I was able to take classes and learn how to write and discuss literature and do other things outside of biology, chemistry, physics, math, you have a more well-rounded candidate. And you don't know this now, and it's so amazing to see like my daughter and how she's doing at Hollins, because she's had such a different experience than the one that I had. Like, I was first generation and Black during the 90s when those two things were extremely difficult at Hollins because it was a different type of campus. And to be able to send my daughter back to Hollins in a different environment and seeing her thrive. And now as a woman who's had a fully lived life and knowing now that volunteering for stuff on campus, seeing other women like leading organizations, clubs, and now I can say, oh, we were practicing leadership skills. We were learning to use our voices at the table. We were learning to assert ourselves. We were learning to compete and work together. We weren't worried about the competition of boys or the tension of boys. Like, I can see that now, and to see her in that environment and seeing her thriving and knowing that the experiences that she's having and how it would best serve her as she leaves. Like, I'm so excited for her. And I've been back to campus now that she's there. And I have to say, like, as much as I knew at the beginning of my Hollins experience that my life was about to change dramatically, I really did feel this. I had some ambivalent feelings about being at Hollins, you know, like there were definitely love, but hard lessons, and some difficult experiences. But when I go back to campus now, I can honestly say it's a different place. Like, it makes me very proud, especially now to have a Black president of this institution. Like, it makes me very proud to say that I'm a Hollins alumni, and I liked my experience so much that I proudly send my daughter there. So at Hollins, in addition to getting a great academic experience and learning to become a leader and using my voice, I definitely learned resiliency there. And all of those skills are definitely serving us in this crazy year that's 2020. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say.
I'll say for me, I think the greatest tool that Hollins gave me in navigating this crazy year is really thinking for myself. Just going out and finding the information that you need and like making sense of what's happening from your own perspective. I think it's so easy to get bogged down in social media and just all of the media that is constantly trying to shove things down your throat. And I think it really gave me the skills to compartmentalize and to really think through things for myself, and to, you know that I have this community behind me that's really supportive. I feel like I've reconnected with so many Hollins friends during the pandemic. And so that's been kind of a blessing in disguise.
So I couldn't get off mute before. So with Tamina's point, I actually got into grad school because of my liberal arts background, because every kid who showed up had a science background. And what made me stand out was having art and history and all those other courses that we had to take at Hollins. And as a matter of fact, I actually went to a STEM high school, a very prestigious STEM high school. And I can see, as looking at the adult alums, the people who were all STEM all the time, they don't understand history, they don't understand politics, they don't understand how science is all a part of that. Like, everything is intertwined. It's not just biology, it's not just math. I mean, everything occurs in some sort of context of society. And that's apparent to people who did not get that lesson in college. So I thank Hollins for this now. I don't know if I appreciated it at the time, but now I do, looking back, like how much of a foundation that gave me. And also, I mean, with regards to what's going on right now, I mean, critical thinking, being able to express myself well, both verbally and in written form, all that came from Hollins. Like, I came into Hollins very shy, very low self-esteem, and Hollins helped me find my voice. Like, it, gave me the confidence, like Tina was saying, we didn't have to compete with boys. We weren't worrying about that. It was very supportive overall. And that all came from Hollins. Like, that's why I made it to and through grad school. I'm sorry, my earring keeps falling out because I'm pulling on it. Made it to and through grad school, made it through a postdoc, and, and now my current career, just being able to draw on this wide background.
I think as we're closing, no matter what decade you went to Hollins, it gave each and every one of us the skills, the guts, the preparedness to do anything we have chosen to do. In 1970, we were told, you're as good as any man out there, go out there and do it. And times have changed, issues are different, challenges are different, but damn it, excuse me, ladies, we had wonderful experiences and we had a great education. And I am so proud to be on the board, and I'm so proud to be here today. And Lauren, thank you so very much. My fellow Hollins sisters, go girl. We can do it, and we have to support the students that are coming in. Things change. You go back on campus, things are the same, and then they're so different. And we have to stay ahead of the curve, and we're going to do it. And we're going to help those women along. We're going to give it forward. We are going to make sure that the next generation has the experiences we've had. Love Hollins. And I have to tell you, when you have a chance, if you haven't, Mary Hinton is the very best. She is beautiful, is the only way I can describe it. I listened to her yesterday. She is beautiful. She's a beautiful person. She loves Hollins, and we never thought we could find a replacement for Nancy Gray. But I have to tell you, Mary's there for us and for the women who have just arrived on campus. So we are so lucky. And I'm sitting here crying because that's what happens when I talk about Hollins.
It happens to all of us in such a good way, and I can't think of a better way to end. We are so fortunate to have this awesome community and President Hinton at the helm. And I thank you all so much for your time. I loved hearing your stories, learning a little bit more about you. I loved everyone in the chat saying hello and being with us. And thank you all so much. And everyone have a great night. Make sure you join us. We have several upcoming events that we're so excited about. So we put the link in the chat, visit our website. But thanks again to our panelists, and everyone have a great evening. Stay well.
Thank you.
Bye.